Hi there. Thank you for joining us this evening. I am Michelle, coordinator for Sanitas CFA program. Tonight, we have the chairman of AB Maximus, Mr. Bing Hui, and Mr. Darren DeGraff, our CFA revision lecturer, who was dragged out of bed to join us in this session. We are glad, despite their busy schedules, we are glad to have them tonight to share how to prepare an effective CFA study plan. Mr. Ding Hui is joining us from Singapore and Darren is joining us from Vancouver. Sanitas and AB Maximus has been partnered to offer CFA programs since 2011. And our July intake is still open for enrollment, yeah? Without further ado, allow me to pass the session to Bing Hui. Over to you, Bing Hui.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, and of course, hello to Darren. So what I'll do is I'll be presenting a few slides for about 15-20 minutes, and then we will open the session for Q&A, and that's where Darren DeGraff, all the way from Vancouver, will be joining us right now at this session. So if we can have the slides up right in 1 minute's time, and we'll get started. Okay. So tonight's session, of course, is about how to prepare an effective study plan. So I'll have my colleagues to put up the slide in a minute's time, and then we can get started right away. Yes. Well, it's also talking about curriculum and study tips as well. But before we do that, let me just introduce our company for just 1 minute. Yeah, next slide. Thank you. AB Maximus is a company based in Singapore, but we've been doing CFA training for the longest time, since 1997 actually. So it's more than 20 years. So we've been running the program mostly around Singapore, Malaysia, Brunei, Jakarta, and Vietnam. And over the years, we've also focused a lot on training people for the industry, developing programs for the financial regulators. We also started doing some investor education the last 12 years. So in a nutshell, we are really specialized in running training programs for financial and investment professionals. So AB Maximus is a partner of Sunway Test since 2011. And in addition to that, we also partner with Wiley, which is our global content partner for CFA program. Next slide. Okay, I have a few slides to talk about the curriculum first before we dive into study tips and study plans. Okay, so for those who are taking CFA for the first time, it's quite a lot of materials. Some of you may have attended the session last Saturday where we talked about possible careers, different roles, what are the prerequisites, what you need in addition to just passing the CFA exams to get your CFA charter. So today we'll zoom in, look at the curriculum, look at study tips. Okay, so there are 3 levels in the exams, right? So what has changed over the years, especially in 2020? So for level 1, there is a minimal change in terms of curriculum. So what the bullet point here says is that basically the content is updated to provide a more contemporary presentation. So in other words, it's more on the surface kind of change rather than real curriculum change. But however, in level 2 and in level 3, there are actually more changes. But I guess most of you today who have dialed in are probably considering level 1 or preparing for level 1. If any of you are taking level 2 or 3, please let us know through the live comments on the Facebook, okay? And also please raise your hands or ask questions later on, because the focus of the next 10-15 minutes will mostly be level 1 centric. Okay, next slide. Okay, so this is something that is relatively new in the curriculum, where CFA Institute for the longest time, the exam started in the early 1960s, actually. It's a very, very long time ago. All this while, it's like 100% into finance, right? But in the last couple of years, things started to change, right? It's not that we're going into programming or anything like that, but it is starting to, consider the very exciting big data, AI, blockchain space, all right? Again, we're not going into programming or any of those technical stuff, but increasingly some of the content is starting to look at some appreciation of big data application, AI, and so on. Next slide. Okay, so just a quick one on level 2. These are new readings coming into 2020. In the slide before this, as far back as 2017 and early 2018, CFA Institute was already starting to talk about expanding beyond pure finance, right? And then sure enough, 2 years later, it gets into the curriculum. So what I want to really, briefly mention here is in terms of the planning cycle for updating of curriculum, it happens every year. Curriculum is being updated every year. By the time something that is contemporary, that is in the market, will take 1 or 2 years to get in, right? So it is not like, okay, just because one particular area is very hot this year, next year is in the curriculum. It needs time. It needs time because, number one, the content must be curated. Number two, someone actually needs to write the study guide and the textbooks. So that takes maybe a year. And then it needs more time, additional time to create the questions so that they can be incorporated into the examinations. So therefore, it takes 2 years. But nevertheless, CFA Institute actually spends a lot of resources in updating its curriculum on a continual basis every year. So every year you will see some changes. Like I mentioned in level 1, the change is quite minimal really in the last couple of years. The new stuff mainly comes in through level 2 and level 3. Next slide. Okay, so in level 3, for 2020, there are even more new readings being incorporated into the curriculum. All right, next slide. Okay, so far I've talked about the cycle of creating content, new curriculum flowing into the exams takes 1 to 2 years. Now I just want to switch focus a little bit and briefly talk about the pass rates. This is not to scare people or what, but the pass rates are really, really low. Why is it so low? Is it because it is so difficult? Yes, maybe partly it is so difficult. Secondly, there are so many people taking the exams, right? So much so that the pass rates in level 1, it's a measly 41%. All right, level 2 improves a little bit, 44%, and level 3 is 56%. So in other words, on average, it's around 50% per level. So at the end of all that, if we can go to the next slide. Yeah. So this is the June 2019. Yeah. Next. Yeah. So in the December 2019 exam, yeah, no surprise, the answer is C again, is 42%. All right. So I mentioned, right, passing rate is so low because, okay, exam is not easy. Number two, so many people take the exam. And the thing is this, in order to be eligible to sign up as a candidate, you don't have to be a finance or accounting graduate. All right, you can be a graduate in any discipline. So we have people from having a science degree and arts degree, we have engineers and so on, taking the exams. So therefore, people with a non-accounting or finance degree, it's not that they pull down the marks, all right, but these folks actually would need more time to prepare for the exams. You might have heard about this 300 hours to prepare per level on average. That is true, provided you are an accounting or finance grad. If you're non-accounting or non-finance, we think you need more time to level up your knowledge to be on par. So this is where the non-finance grads may struggle a little bit because more time is needed, and because more time is needed, it might actually handicap certain people, right? Okay. The other thing you might notice on this slide, if our colleagues can just click, we see something comes up. Okay, no show rate approximately 25%. Okay, so the number 42%, right, is actually based on those people who show up. All right, so let's say there are 100 people who signed up, only 75 show up, 25 don't show up at level 1, right? They just chicken out, right? Because they feel like, oh, okay, on the exam day when they woke up, maybe they were not so well prepared, right? The key is good preparation, right? So they felt, hey, I didn't prepare too much. Therefore, I don't want to torture myself for 6 hours, right? This year, the exam is still 6 hours, but next year, when level 1 becomes computer-based, it will be just slightly shorter, all right? But nonetheless, it is still as rigorous. So, okay, so 25% do not show up, right? So 75% show up. Of the 75% who show up, 42% of them will pass, all right? So 75 times 0.42, right? So what do you get, right? So the number actually is quite low. So every level, people gets filtered off. Next slide. So by the time we end up, someone completing the program, really, it's less than 10% of the original cohort that started. So I'm just showing some pass rates here. The trend obviously is a downtrend, but it's kind of stabilized in the last, 4 or 5 years or so. But actually, if you look further back, in the beginning, in the 1960s, it was 90% actually, right? Okay, having said that, we don't want to scare prospective candidates. Wow, it's so difficult. All right. But actually, if you put in the effort, all right, we believe that most people will be able to pass the exam. All right. It is more effort than anything else. All right. Putting in the effort is very, very important. Next slide. Right. So that is an important tip, putting in the effort. Okay. So this slide, we look at the 10 subjects in level 1. In level 2, you also look at the same 10 subjects. Level 3, the focus kind of changes. Most of the exam is testing the portfolio management and wealth planning part, all right? But for now, we focus on level 1 and maybe a bit of level 2 for today in terms of our tips for preparing and studying. The topic of ethics is very important. all three levels, it has a high weightage. In level 1 is 15%. Okay, so you might have heard a myth saying that if you fail ethics, you fail the exam. Not true. It is a myth. Having said that, because it is a huge topic, 15%, we recommend candidates spend appropriate amount of time for this. It is worth all of your effort, because whatever that you learn in level 1 ethics, the next two levels also is based on exactly the same reading. They just add a few more readings for ethics, all right? But the base content for ethics remains all three levels. So this is, like, if you ask me, value for your time, all right? And in addition to that, in a borderline case, let's say, for example, the passing score is 60%, all right? It is never 50%. It's somewhere between 50 to 70%. That's the minimum passing score. Let's say this year the passing score is 60%, and let's say you marginally fail. Okay, for marginal failures, the examiner may actually bump you up if you do well for ethics. Okay, so along the way, while I'm talking, right, please feel free to post your questions, because colleagues will be looking out for your questions on the Facebook live comments, all right? And then we will answer them at the Q&A, all right? So please feel free to post your questions on Facebook. Okay, so quantitative methods, economics, financial reporting, analysis, that's like accounting, right? So these are the basic building blocks, 35%, all right? For this one, I would say where the exam is pitched at is actually at your maybe second year or final year university level for these few topics. In fact, for most of the topics, it's like maybe second year, final year, or maybe it's in your first year of your Master of Finance kind of difficulty. So in other words, it is not rocket science for the rest of the subjects, right? You might have come across it in your final year in university if you did finance, or maybe in your first year of your MBA or Masters of Finance. So no rocket science, all right? And in the exams, for level 1, it's entirely multiple choice, all right? Entirely multiple choice. So the answer is all there, right? But guess what? For this year still, there are 240 questions over 6 hours. That gives you 90 seconds per question on average, all right? So you will not be able to guess your way through, even though it's ABC, all right? Trust me, it may seem easy. It's not that easy, but at the same time, like I say, it's not very, very, very difficult. No rocket science. Preparation is the key. Next slide. Okay, so this slide talks about the exam cycles. Normally in June, we test all three levels, or rather CFA Institute have the exams for all three levels. Because of the COVID-19 situation, all the June exams were postponed, all right, to December. Traditionally, level 1 is also tested in December, okay? So in other words, level 1 is tested twice a year. Next slide. So next year, 2021, some of you listening in may consider signing up for the exams for next year. Next year will be slightly different for level 1. Okay, in the sense that while the content or the curriculum remains the same, in fact, this is the first time you can use the same book 2020 in 2021 for all three levels, right? Because of the COVID. Okay, you can use the same book. But the thing is, for the first time in history, CFA Institute is going from a paper-based exam, meaning you go to exam hall and then you shade the answers, to a computer-based for level 1. Okay, so level 1 will become computer-based. So if you're in Malaysia, you need to go to the computer-based, the computer testing center in KL. If you're in Singapore, of course, there are also some of the appointed computer testing centers in Singapore for level 1. And in fact, whichever country you're in, there will be a computer testing center for level 1. Okay, next slide. So this is a quick one, and I got this from CFA Institute. Basically, for people who are not taking the exam this year, or maybe you're used to taking the exam this year and then you're taking it next year, the first exam is in February, not in June, right? Usually it's June for the last, since 1960s, but for the computer-based test, it's in February. It's over a 7-day period. That means you go in one of the 7 days, not over 7 days, one of the 7 days. All right. The number of questions have reduced, but the curriculum remains. Okay, curriculum remains. Okay, so the exam is shortened a little bit. It is 2.25 hours times 2 sessions, morning, afternoon. All right. So, okay, the rest pretty much self-explanatory. Next slide. Okay, anyway, I mean, in case you didn't catch some of the things on the slides, you can always Google it on CFA Institute's website. A lot of these changes are listed there. Okay, next. So once again, if you have any questions, please post them on the Facebook. Okay, so this thing about enrollment fees, well, in case you haven't signed up yet, the fee, there's an early bird fee and then the regular fee, right? So you can see on the screen, if you sign up for the exams earlier, it's $700 US. If you sign up a bit later, it's $1,000 US. If you even miss that 1,000 USD deadline, there is another deadline. The price goes up further. Okay, so this is like the exam registration fee, right? That is when you take the exam. There's also a one-time program enrollment fee that you see at the top of the slide. It's a one-time fee. So that is valid indefinitely. Okay, so when you go on to level 2 or level 3, you don't pay the one-time enrollment fee anymore. You just need to pay the exam registration fee. Even if you take a break in between the exams, let's say you take a 1 or 2 year break, when you come back again, your program enrollment fee does not expire. It's a one-time fee. You only need to continue taking or paying the examination fees. So likewise, if you have passed exams, you get to keep your exam results indefinitely. Many years ago, when Darren and myself took the exams initially, there is actually there's a validity date for the exam results. I remember back then that if you don't complete the whole program within 7 years, you need to re-enroll again as a candidate. So thankfully, no more. Okay, you get to keep your exam results indefinitely. Okay, next slide. Now, this is where I will slow down a little bit and talk a little bit more. Okay, so the upcoming exam is on December 5th this year. So how do people prepare for this? All right. Some people form self-study groups. on their own, or they form study groups, right? Or they join a tuition program. So all over the world, there are many tuition providers. So Sunway Test, AB Maximus, and also Wiley, all three of these companies are registered with CFA Institute as an approved program provider. So meaning that we agree to abide by certain minimum standards set by CFA Institute. All right. Sunway Test, as is a very, very big and strong tuition provider, very, very strong in accounting and financial programs, right? And Sunway University as well, right? One of the top universities, top private universities in Malaysia. AB Maximus is a long-established financial training company. Wiley is a global company, education company. Not only do they publish content, they actually publish the CFA Institute textbooks. They also publish CFA study guides, which we are using. Wiley also has a lot of other educational programs and content. So our program, I would say, combines all the three partners together to deliver this program. So we pride ourselves as one of the earlier providers of the CFA program. We also pride ourselves with a strong bench of instructors. We have a global panel. The regular weekly or fortnightly classes, depending on where you're taking the classes, are mostly from Malaysia and Singapore. And then when it comes to revision, we depend on some of our overseas partners as well. All right. So from time to time, Darren also do join us. In fact, since 2011, before the COVID, he actually flies to Sunway once or twice a year to deliver the program as well. But this time around, I guess all of us are stuck in our home countries. Okay. So our program, and in fact, after this, I think Michelle can also send you more information. We are starting at the end of July. We're running our revision in October and November. We also do a mock exam as well. All right. So the strategy is this, right? You go for regular classes, wherever it is, right? Your self-study, study groups, or join a program, regular classes. All right. The strategy is this. As you're preparing every week or every fortnight, focus on buckets or individual subjects. All right. Focus on the subjects and compartmentalize yourself and try to understand it as much as you can within a certain planned time. So once you're done, let's say if you plan to study quantitative methods over 3 weeks, okay? Set aside that time, focus on quantitative methods. When you're done, move on, okay? You need to move on. Even if you're not quite done, move on to the next subject. Focus on one subject at a time during this regular study period. Okay, so by the time you're done with your roughly 3 months to 4 months of regular study, of course, along the way there are checkpoints, right? At the end of that chapter, you practice some questions. At the end of that subject, you also practice using the question bank that we provide. So part of the package includes the Wiley study guide, the Wiley question banks. On top of that, if you are CFA candidate already signed up for the exam, you can have access to some of the practice questions from CFA Institute, right? So do this regular reading, regular testing or assessment, and then move on. So by the time it's around late October, that's time to do the half marathon, right? That's the time you do a mock exam. Test yourself not just based on one subject, but test the whole thing. all the 10 subjects and see where you stand. All right, that is a stock take. And then when it comes after that, you look at your mock exam outcome. It will tell you where your weaknesses are. Then you come in for our intensive revision. Okay, it's intensive because we don't split the curriculum into weekly or fortnightly anymore. Previously, before COVID, it is done over 3 solid days. But this time around, because it's done online, we will try to spread it out. We will not cram everything into 3 days. We will spread it out over a couple of weeks during this, late October to late November. We will split it over a few weekends to do a solid revision. Now, on top of that, the other support that we do, which is very, very important, we actually have a WhatsApp group whereby we have our students here in Malaysia. In this group, we have our instructors in the WhatsApp chat. We have 2 WhatsApp chats running in parallel. One is actually for the serious study stuff. There's another WhatsApp chat that we open up for all our current and former students. It's more on talking about career advice and on jobs and on opportunities. So we put new people joining this group as well. Yeah. So this is where there is a lot of peer learning, peer sharing, and it runs like almost 24 hours, right? Because we've got our Singapore Malaysia group here. We've got one of our instructors in the UK, Chris. So there's a small buzz happening there, and of course we have Darren from Vancouver on the other side of the world, right? Okay, next slide. Yeah, so this is a very, very, very global program. Instructors are global. Our students collectively are global, or at least largely regional and global. Okay. So this is for our level 2 and 3 audience. If you are level 2 and 3, we have also a program for you. You can also join our classes as well. Okay. Even though if you're not from Malaysia, you can also join these online courses and revision too. No problem, because it's online. Okay, next slide. I'm about to finish in terms of my prepared slides. And this is about the last one. So I kind of mentioned this before, stick to the regular program, right? So before you come for classes, whether in person or online, we always recommend, please read up either the CFA Institute text or the study guide. Come for classes. After that, review the questions. And then the next block, you just rinse and repeat, all right? Next slide. Okay, this is just the contact slide. I think we can open the floor for questions, and I would like Darren to join me. I kind of took up a bit too much time, actually, Darren. Yeah. Hey, Darren.
Hey, what's going on? How are you folks doing?
Yeah, we're all good. Okay, so I think
I saw two questions that I can field while you were talking, then you and I can do our thing. So someone asked whether or not how much the curriculum would change. So I don't know if that was before or after Beng Hui mentioned this, but I'll just repeat what he said already, which is that the curriculum is not changing in 2021. And perhaps that's just to give, I kind of feel the pain, with all the change that's going on, with moving online for level 1 and perhaps COVID and whatnot. So no change for 2021. And then another question came in: Could one self-study as opposed to a tuition type lecture, which we're somewhat promoting here today, is well, really the best analogy is the gym membership. So just ask yourself, if you have a gym membership, or if you don't, just think of the analogy. Are you the type of person that just gets up in the morning before work and slogs an hour and a half in the gym, or do you need that personal trainer? So the old joke is, some of us, we have in North America, we have like a running machine, at home, and usually it just ends up, holding our laundry. So that's probably the best answer to that question. So I'm going to now scroll down to see if any new questions have come in. And also we have a team here. We have an army of about half a dozen that are taking questions that you're posting on Facebook, right, Bing Hui?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, so it's entirely possible to prepare, doing entirely self-study, or have some, small study groups with your buddies, or attend classes like this, right? That's what we mentioned. It's completely possible. It's a personal choice, but more gets done if you have, a kind of a regimented program like this. And like I mentioned, right, the group is not just you're not just learning from, our instructors, but also there's a lot of peer learning across the different continents now. Yeah, and also like I mentioned, we have this other group running in parallel that's talking about, hey, there are jobs available in wherever, like Hong Kong, Timbuktu, in the UK, in the US, and so on, right? Yeah.
Yeah, like as an example, and again, I thought I saw a question pop in. We use Zoom, so this is kind of new for me. I like the system that we're using here. I thought I saw a question pop up, but I'm just going to keep an eye on the comments. But please do raise more questions, because I actually have a separate one, because I don't see any questions. So I'm going to grab one from the WhatsApp group. So Bing Hui mentioned the WhatsApp group. So here's a question that came in the WhatsApp group. I just asked the temperature. I said, how is everyone's revision coming along? And Javier mentioned the videos are great. Some exercise take a long time to do, like covariance. Are these typical exam questions? So in terms of support, the WhatsApp group is quite brilliant, actually, because it kind of allows us to continue the dialogue with you folks between regular classes as well as before and after the revision. So I'm looking for chat questions here. I don't see any, so I'll just answer that question on behalf for your edification. Is that, yeah, some exercises do take longer than others. Like maybe I'll just throw it out to you, building on the question from the WhatsApp group. How many of you have taken a look at the statistics or the quantitative methods reading and come across the calculation of covariance? Or maybe if you're a recent grad, you'll remember that absolutely nasty formula. It is actually scary. It's very long. It involves something like probability times a variable minus the mean squared type thing. Plus, it depends how many variables you have. It takes a very, very long time. So again, I don't know how quickly these chats come in, but how many of you have actually taken a bite, have actually broken the seal, as it were, on the CFA textbooks? Oh, there we go. Okay, so I'll answer the question, and hopefully that will prompt more questions to come in. So the answer is that at level 1, there are close to 600 learning outcome statements. Oh, there we go. We're seeing more questions. Excellent. There are close to 600 learning outcome statements at level 1, more like 500 at level 2, and I believe even fewer at level 3. All of them are fair game. Okay, so as Bing Hui alluded to earlier, there's no gaming of this exam. So covariance is very, or I would say very likely. It's just as likely as other concepts, and perhaps arguably even more likely, because a core concept is a concept that either spans multiple study sessions or multiple levels, or is just simply fundamental in nature. So covariance leads to a very important parametric variable called correlation. And correlation is fundamental in another study session called portfolio management. So for example, if you were to take real estate or private equity or a collection of whiskey, it historically has had a low correlation with traditional asset classes. So yeah, the calculation of correlate or covariance and the related correlation and how it fits into another study session likely or arguably has a higher probability of appearing on the exam than any other. But again, with the caveat that any of the LOSs are fair game. So again, don't try to game the exam. All right, so I'm gonna see if I see you're probably mentioned. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll take this question that popped up here by Faiz. Okay, what are the odds of a person with a full-time job and not having finance study background to pass the program? Okay, so the CFA program is a professional program and is meant for people who are working, actually, not really meant for people who are doing it full-time, right? Because remember, part of the CFA, getting the CFA charter, you need that 4 years of experience, right? So how are you going to get the 4 years if you don't work? So the thing is, most people, if not all, have a full-time job and the study is just part-time, right? And also most of the candidates actually do not have a finance background. Yeah, so don't worry too much about this, all right? No worries. Okay.
Yeah, I would just add to that so an earlier question came in whether someone might want to consider the self-study route or take up a tuition program. So Faiz, not to paint you into a corner, but you'd probably be one of the folks that I would classify someone that could probably use a little bit of a help, like a personal trainer. Okay, because especially if you don't have a finance study background, then especially when students get into like things like accounting. And I'll give you a quick example. So my wife, so full disclosure, she stepped up to the plate. She was going to write in June. So just like you folks, with any luck, she'll be writing in December with you. And we were doing deferred taxes the other week. And if any of you have hit that chapter, you'll know that's probably the hardest reading. It's probably the hardest reading at level 1 because it just really, it almost seems kind of out of nowhere. And what she was struggling with was terms like taxable income, which appears on your tax return, and pre-tax income, which appears on your income statement. So I'm going through it all, and then very quickly I realized that she hadn't grasped the concept or the notion that there are actually 2 sets of financial statements. And that was really hard for her to kind of like start to actually understand how to do these calculations, because she's like, wait a second, I don't really even understand the income statement. So you're telling me that there's another income statement that you give to the tax man? I'm like, yeah, that's the way it works. And she's like, how can that be? How can you report double declining balance on your tax return and straight line on your financial statements? And I said, I don't know, maybe the lobbyists back in America, they just made this possible, But anyway, my point is that it was just so hard for her to calculate income taxes payable when she's looking at the income statement, and you don't calculate it on the income statement, you calculate it on your tax return. So a little bit of help, Faiz, might be in order for you. And again, my wife's background, philosophy. So yeah, but she's grinding away. She's grinding away, but it's not easy, but it is possible. Okay, back to you, Sifu.
Okay, I think Martin has a question for us about the 4 years experience thing. Okay, so on the CFA Institute website, you can actually take a self-directed quiz and then answer some questions, and they will tell you whether, okay, based on what you have described, it qualifies, it doesn't qualify. Okay, but in case after going through that quiz and they tell you, oh, okay, sorry, it doesn't qualify, you can still write in to CFA Institute and ask. All right, yeah, it's important to ask. Or if all else fails, you can also write to us. No problem. We're happy to provide some advice. Okay. Now for Martin's case, procurement and supply chain. All right. I think you need to be a bit more specific on that. It is not the industry that you're in, but it is the job that you're doing within that industry. So in other words, you don't have to be working in a bank. You don't have to be working in a fund management company in order to become a CFA, right? You can be working in an MNC, but in an investment-related work. Okay, so it should be investment-related. Doesn't matter what industry or what kind of company it is. Okay.
I'll take the next one. So Michelle messaged separately, Alvin, that closer to the start of classes, we'll set up the WhatsApp group. Okay. So more to come soon enough. And then Mohammed, I'll take Mohammed's as well, because Mohammed, I'm actually well, I can't technically say I'm a C. Well, in Canada it's called CPA now. I did clear the exams. I also cleared the US exams, but nevertheless, when I was back in the industry, oh gosh, how long ago was it now, Sifu? Like
very long.
Wow. Anyway, all my colleagues who were above me they were double barreled, right? They had like double fisted. They had CFA and CPA. So that was the director of finance, the CFO, everybody I respected above me had both. It doesn't mean you have to have both, but if you want to ball it, my friend, go for it, baby. Back to you, Sifu.
Okay, we'll take Ezran's question. What is the max attendees per session for online class? Michelle, you want to answer that one later on, yeah?
Yeah, we'll take the next one. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, but I don't think we're going to have like 100 people, right? No way.
Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. Yeah. Okay. Alvin's question. I work in marketing FMCG company. Thinking of switching jobs. Okay. Yeah, this is something that we also recommend, right? While you may not be in the right job at the moment, it's time to consider, all right? For level 1, you can still, okay, never mind, you can still go for the exams. But as you move up to the higher levels, it is more helpful if you are doing an investment-related job, all right? Especially in level 3. Level 3, this is where the exam focuses more on portfolio management, wealth planning, dealing with clients, whether they are individual clients or corporate clients. So if you're not in a position that deals with investment products or deal with clients, a little bit of disadvantage, although it's not like terrible, but it helps if you are in the industry. Okay, so yeah, start looking out, okay, and if possible, make that switch.
And I'll just add to that. Excellent point, Sifu. Okay, so there's an old expression: "Be careful what you ask for." So, Alvin, let's say you get that sexy, exotic job working in derivatives at Goldman Sachs. How many hours a week do you think you're going to be working now, my friend? So it might be better to hang low in the back office, as it were. You know what I mean? Like back office, I just mean in general. Take the low profile job, check in, check out. And after you clear, definitely after you clear level 1, as Sifu alluded to, or maybe even level 2. I usually recommend waiting until you clear level 2 and then go look for that job. And as Beng Hui alluded to as well, is that, you know, by the time you clear level 2, you're going to be more marketable. So there's also likely going to be, or presumably, a higher chance that you're going to get that job at that point anyway. So it's very natural. It's a very natural thing that happens. On a related note, I just want all of you to just kind of like buy into the CFA lifestyle. It's an expression I've been using for like 15 years now, I guess, as long as I've been in the business, is that once you give into the CFA lifestyle, it's much like a gym membership. It's something where you realize that it becomes part of your life, and you just understand that this is going to take a minimum of like 3 years. Okay. And so just understand that now and 3 years from now seems like a long ways away, but believe me, it'll just go like that. And it's very natural. So you're going to go through, you're going to pass, you're going to start clearing the levels, you're going to start getting more eligible for a promotion. So it'll all happen quite naturally.
Yep.
Okay, so we got a specific question from Kajun, which maybe one of the folks can. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think Michelle can also contact Kajun on the course study materials. Yeah, you can actually purchase them, through this program. It should be cheaper than what you can find on the official Wiley website. It is. Yeah. Special discounts for Malaysians, right?
Oh, nice.
I'm Malaysian, by the way. I'm Malaysian. I'm still Malaysian. Okay. Okay.
All right. So we don't. We're going to encourage you to post more questions. But while we do that, Beng Hui, we have some typical questions that we've heard since before Jesus was a cowboy.
Okay.
So one of them, Beng Hoi asked me earlier, was kind of like my top 3 study tips.
Yes.
So one thing I want to talk about is I want to go back to weightages. So I don't know if the someone in the Wizard of Oz in the background can go back to that slide earlier. But anyway, so you'll notice that there are 3 topic areas at levels 1 and 2, and I'll just focus on primarily level 1, but also level 2 as well, is equity, fixed income, and FRA, and of course ethics. So you'll notice that at levels 1 and at level 2, they are the highest weightage topics. Now, again, we're not encouraging you to game the exam per se, but do understand that if you do score well in those areas, that presumably you're gonna have a better chance of clearing the paper overall. And back in a former life that I shared with Beng Hoi, there we go. Thank you. Back in a former life with Beng Hoi, we learned from the subject matter experts at a company called Stala that students who did well in accounting tended to do well on the exam overall. Now, that was back when accounting was worth a little bit more. Of course, they dress it up with this really exciting name, financial reporting and analysis, but it really is accounting. But even though the weightage is lower, if you think about it, in FRA, if you can understand all your ratios and how to calculate things like your growth rate, well, that all ties into things like corporate finance and equity and fixed income, because you're going to be discounting back to the present value and calculating things like net present value, the value of a bond, the value of a stock. So again, if you understand kind of like the mechanics and how discounting and compounding and how financial statement analysis fits into all that, it obviously it just makes sense. It's intuitive that you'd probably do well overall on the paper. And that benefit, that hard work that you put into level 1, that'll pay dividends down the line, because again, if you look at level 2, ethics potentially is the same weightage, maybe less, but potentially the same weightage at 15. FRA is still a heavy hitter at 10 to 15, same as equity, same as fixed income. So there's a nice little tip there, a nice little strategy tip. Now, in terms of your revision, one thing that we do want to make sure you understand is that the CFA Institute has 2 sets of question banks. One is end of chapter questions, which of course can be found at the end of the chapter. Then you also have questions in the CFA, what do they call it, ecosystem, which are different. So the questions in the CFA ecosystem, word on the street is, and of course we have to be very careful how we couch this, they're more exam-like. Let's just put it that way, as a very generic comment. But the end of chapter questions are quite brilliant as well. Those are the ones that you'll want to do on a weekly or regular basis. But as you get closer to the exam, you want to stop doing the end of chapter questions and do the ones in the CFA ecosystem. So where you'll find them is the end of chapter questions are going to be in the PDF. Okay, so no longer on Vital Source or whatever. They're in a PDF. You get that as part of your fee. So just go to the end of the chapter. If you do order the textbook, don't recommend you do. Save your money. But if you do order the textbook, then obviously it's at the end of the chapter. The CFA ecosystem is in the CFA website, and that's where you'll get those questions that'll be a little bit more exam-like. Let me give you a quick example. In the end of chapter questions, they might ask you such things as, what is your interest expense in year 3? What is your principal pay down in your mortgage for year 4? What is depreciation using straight line in year 6? That would be like a typical CFA end of chapter question. Really, really good, because you actually learn how to calculate that stuff, which you do need to know to learn, right? So it's learn by doing. But the questions in the CFA ecosystem are more like, let's say, Beng Hoi Incorporated used double declining balance instead of straight line. What would be the impact on return on equity? So if you haven't calculated straight line or double declining balance when doing the end of chapter questions, then you would not be able to answer that question on game day, right? So again, on game day, you shouldn't expect to see a lot of numbers. A lot of students think, oh, I'm going to see a lot of calculations. No. It's going to be more like company ABC uses LIFO instead of FIFO. No numbers. What is the impact on debt to equity? Okay, folks. So again, make sure you use the CFA end of chapter questions on a regular basis. But in November, which I call mock season, you want to be doing mocks, as well as questions in the CFA ecosystem. And in terms of the the Sunway AB Maximus Wiley program, again, as Beng Hui mentioned earlier, you will have access to questions in the Wiley. We call it like the question bank or test bank. So there are about 5,000 questions there as well. And those questions you'll want to be doing on a regular, like a weekly or fortnightly or regular basis. Okay. Now we do have, Beng Hui, we do have that webinar that I did for Wiley a week or so ago. We do have that recorded, so that would maybe go into more detail specifically about the Wiley resources in addition to what Sunway and AB Maximus offer. Back to you, buddy.
Sure. Okay, there's a question on financial calculator. Yeah, this is a good one. Are they allowed during exams? Of course they are. Without the calculator, it's going to be tough. Okay, so for the CFA exams, there are only 2 approved models of calculators allowed. One of them is the Texas Instrument BA2+. Another one is the HP12C. Okay, so these are the only 2 calculator models that are allowed. For our program, we actually recommend the first one, which is the Texas Instrument BA2+. All right. It's actually a lot easier to use than the second calculator that I mentioned, which is HP12C, because HP12C does not have an equal button. Which calculator on earth does not have an equal button? HP12C.
Yeah, and in the videos, like one of the main instructors, Peter Lento, he actually prefers the HP12C, so we do have you covered if you like to use it. So if you've already bought it, let's say you're a bond trader or an engineer, right, Beng Hui, like some folks just like my dad, I don't know what the heck was on his mind. He's a math major at uni, and it's like, what? So he swears by the HP12C. So if you have that kind of mentality, we do have you covered. But for me, like when I do my part of the revision, I only touch the TI BA2+, the Texas Instruments, and most people use the Texas Instruments. So I'm with you on that one, Beng Hui, for sure.
Yeah. In fact, if you have, I'm not sure whether Michelle is still having that promotion. If you sign up for the program, you get a free calculator. Okay, maybe Michelle can let the audience know after this whether you still have your free calculator promotion. Okay. Yeah. Okay, related to this calculator thing is formula sheets, right? Some of you may just have taken some exams at universities, or maybe certain universities may provide you with a formula sheet, or maybe they give you that T table or whatever it is for your stats. For the CFA, I'm afraid not. No formula sheets, sorry. So you need the calculator, okay? That's it. And I think just now, Darren kind of alluded to is not everything is calculation question, right? You can actually have a financial question that doesn't require calculation, all right? Which kind of mentioned just now by Darren. Yeah.
Yeah, right on.
Okay.
And the other thing too, folks, is that so again, my wife taking the exam, she's a little bit stressed out because she can't memorize all these formulas, and she gets really down on herself sometimes. One of my students said it best. That she said, "Darren, I don't actually spend time memorizing the formulas. I just do a lot of questions, and then they came to her naturally." And I think that's the brilliant way to approach it. Is don't just sit there and try and memorize a bunch of formulas. Just do as many questions as you can. So as I mentioned, there are about 5,000 questions in the Wiley Test Bank, and a further 1,000 or so in the CFA ecosystem, and I imagine about another 1,000 at the end of the chapter. So that 300 hours reference that Beng Hui mentioned earlier comes into play here. A lot of that time will be spent, grinding through the problems. So again, don't fret too much about memorizing the formulas, because you shouldn't expect the exam to be super calculation intensive. And just when you start getting closer to the exam and you look at the mock exams, you're going to find that they're a lot like the again, the questions in the CFA ecosystem. Much more conceptual, in nature, much more analytical. But again, if you haven't done the groundwork, if you haven't done the donkey work, you know, in terms of doing the end of chapter questions, which are calculation intensive, then it'll be hard to master the concept.
Okay, we have a question about the exam questions by Isran. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll take that one. Yeah. So again, yeah, maybe it sounds a bit repetitive, but again, students I think get misled because after doing end of chapter questions or doing Wiley test bank questions, they think, oh, this question is going to be very calculation intensive. Again, on the CFA website, I don't know when they make it available, but at level 1 you get 3 mock exams. So Ezra, just go take a look under the candidate resources on the CFA website, download, but don't write it because you don't want to spoil it. You want to save those mocks until mock season in November. But just peruse quickly the questions in the CFA mocks, and you'll see that it'll speak to what I'm talking about, which I'm just going to take a guess here to play it safe, that more than 50% are going to be more of, again, company ABC uses, or they book a lease as a capital lease instead of an operating lease. What is the impact on your debt to equity ratio? Things like that. That's what you're going to find. But again, there are no guarantees in life, so you have to, as you know, as Jackie Chan says, you know, you prepare for the worst and you hope for the best, baby.
Okay, Isran actually has another follow-up question: whether there will be Excel templates provided for cash flow kind of questions.
Not yet. Maybe
no.
Next year.
Okay, I just want to maybe circle back to his earlier question and maybe expand a little bit more on what Darren said. You know, at level 1, the questions are all standalone questions, so the questions are not very long. Whereas in level 2, you get a case, right, a mini case, and a set of 4 to 6 related questions. So really, level 1 is more straightforward. Level 2 is based on a mini case with 4 to 6 questions attached to it. So many mini cases, that is. Okay.
Yeah, and just while you mentioned, you kind of jogged my memory on changes in the CFA curriculum. So there was an absolutely massive change at level 3. About 40% of the content changed. My poor level 3 colleague, he was really busy this past year. Level 1, again, really only cosmetic changes. So for your purpose, no change really at level 1. At level 2, the new readings, I'll be honest with you, I'll just be straightforward. I kind of call them, all these new readings, I think there were 5 or 6, really just kind of like BS readings. They're very definitional in nature. So any of you who are really excited about learning how to code in Python, as Beng Hoi referenced, no, like contain your excitement. I think the most interesting thing that I found when I did those videos for Wiley was when you get into like this document matrix and what they call a bag of words. So they get a little bit into algorithms, and they talk about let's say a statement. So let's say they're using some type of a neural network or optical processing technology or whatever. All these fancy words, very definitional. I've already screwed some of them up. Is they'll take, let's say Beng Hoi was speaking with the European Economic Union, maybe one of their treasury meetings. So they're actually capturing audio data, and this is where it gets so freaking cool, right? They're actually capturing things he's saying verbally, as well as something in the newspaper that maybe Michelle mentioned. And so let's say Beng Hoi makes the following statement. I think the market sentiment is not positive, something like that. So there's this thing called data wrangling and data processing. And as part of that process, the audio, the algorithm will take what Beng Hoi said verbally and will cut out things like articles. So there are things what are called like stop words and things like that. So, but we have to be really careful with that because he said that it's not positive. So if you just say, I'm going to take out articles like the and and not, well, in this context, if you take out not positive, you totally miss the keep, right? The keep on it. So that's where it kind of gets a little bit interesting, but then you got to stop because, you know, when you start looking at the questions are more like, what is big data? So you can't get lost in the exotic, the sexy stuff. What's going to be on the exam is maybe what is big data, or what is AI, or what is blockchain, or what is cryptocurrency, or what is tokenization. So unfortunately, when you go through that reading, you're going to go to sleep, right? At level 1, particularly, and even at level 2. Like I said, level 2 in big data and the whole fintech, it does get a little bit more interesting, but it's still very superficial in nature, and no coding, nothing along those lines. Interesting, yes, except the LOSs, if you check them, are really definitional in nature. And I took a quick boo at the one on electronic, currency? Was it electronic trading? I think it was, Beng Hoi. I took a quick boo at it because I didn't do that lecture, but really what it got into is it got into things like, what is market impact cost? What are direct costs, like brokerage fees and things like that? And there was only 2 calculations on calculating trading costs. So that reading at level 2, again, is largely definitional in nature. And that ESG reading, really, it's super definitional as well. And really all they get into, and it's very important, of course, right? Don't just focus on the shareholder, focus on the local community, focus on the employees, focus on your customers, focus on your suppliers. So it just takes your stakeholder, which up to this point has been the shareholder, and expands it to a larger audience. And these are all like best practices. So it's very theoretical, very definitional. So really at level 2, again, it really, the curriculum hasn't really changed, right? The bread and butter is still valuing bonds, valuing stocks, valuing and pricing derivatives, right? Pension accounting, translation accounting, consolidation accounting, and in statistics, the whole regression type stuff. So really level 2 hasn't really changed for about, to be honest, like 3 or 4 years now. Fundamentally, it's still the same. So I just wanted to kind of touch on that because I know we talked about weightages and exam changes and things of that nature. The hard part, folks, is sticking with the program, right? That's the hardest part. Just like a gym routine, starting something, committing to it, and staying with it. And that's where the trainers, we're here to help you on that journey. Yeah. I don't see any other questions. Does anyone want to? I know we're a little bit past time, I think, technically, but I'm okay. I'm actually awake now. Now it's like 7 o'clock here in Vancouver. Yeah, I don't know if there's anything else we want to cover off. I know, Beng Hoi, we talked about some other things. Anything else that we usually do, our usual shtick? Is there anything we've missed?
Yeah, I guess besides the tips,
yeah, I'm just looking quickly here at Ezran's last question, just building on that. So Ezran, at the local uni I teach at last semester, in the past, we kind of taught Excel in class, but we never actually examined it. But now that the exams moved online, we're now actually getting students to upload an Excel template, calculate the value of like NPV and things like that. So I think it's coming down the pike. I think it's safe to say at some point it's going to happen. And going back to the reference to Python, it wouldn't surprise me at all in like maybe 3 to 5 years where you're actually coding in Python and showing your results on an online exam at all 3 levels, right, Beng Hoi? Like at some point it's going to happen, but no, not today, not tomorrow. I think by the time you folks finish level 3, I still don't think that you will be doing anything on Excel and uploading it for them to mark. I just don't think it's possible.
I don't think. Yeah, you're right, Darren. I don't think that will happen in the near term. Yeah, but 3 to 5 years down, possible. Yeah, we'll see. Yeah. There will always be some kind of advanced warning. Such a major shift. Yeah,
and we'll be informing you. Pass the exam now before it gets not necessarily harder, but different, right?
Yeah.
So Ezra's got another follow-up question here. Right definition for a guy who's looking only to level 2 passes who don't finish level 3. I think you might need to rephrase your question, my friend. I kind of get what you're driving at. Are you talking about your description on your LinkedIn profile? Maybe you could add a little bit more color to that. Oh yeah, it sounds like it. So just state factual information. So let's just use LinkedIn, right? Or your business card or your email signature. Never ever in your topic, like in the profile, can you put that you are a candidate. it has to be in the background. So the CFA Institute, if you look at their website, just do a search. They have very prescriptive guidance on how you can refer to it on LinkedIn. But again, in your title, in your headline, again, business card, email signature, anything like that, you cannot reference your candidacy in the CFA program. However, on your resume, maybe marketing collateral. I know one of the students said you're in marketing. In your like if you're writing research reports, you can reference factually that you have cleared this exam, whether that be level 1 or level 2. And you can also state your candidacy in the program, but just make sure that you have already registered for that forthcoming exam. Yeah. Okay.
Yep. So there is no like partial designation, right, for CFA. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we're winding down.
Looks like we are good.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. I think this is a fantastic evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Thank you very much for your attention. And of course, Darren, it's really a pleasure to see you again.
Yeah, likewise, buddy.
Good morning.
Yeah, it was so sad this year, folks. This is the first time in like 10 years, I think, that I haven't come back to work with Beng Hoi in some capacity, whether it was like Wiley or Stala or just on our own. You know, it was hard. It was weird. I really miss being in Asia. So those of you who do take up the revision, hope to see you and like online, that is, this time. And next year, with any luck, don't want to jinx it, maybe we'll see you in a level two. Yeah.
All right.
Have a good one, folks. Take care.